The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Good crack-a-noon to our friends on the East Coast. I'm Todd Obert from Productive Corporation. Joined alongside me virtually is Scott Roberts of Bitdefender. And today we are going to talk about XDR. This is their offering in the detection and response or detection and remediation space, and pretty cool stuff. So what we'd like you to do is sit back, listen, and learn, and I'll go through my bit, and then I'll be off the microphone here shortly. What we're going to cover is the differences between XDR. How is it different than EDR and MDR, or there's similarities too, right? Some of it is just marketing language. And then we're going to talk about Bitdefender's solution specifically. What kind of visibility it gives you across OT and IoT devices, how you can really see events consolidated, improves responsiveness, and as well as it really becomes a tool that you want to use. You have some tools probably out there that you have to use. I'm going to say this is one that you're going to want to use. So with that, let's sit back and meet Productive in 1 minute. Who is Productive Corporation? I'm sure you're shouting out there, even though you're muted. Well, thank you for asking. Productive Corporation provides security solutions for mid-size companies. We offer specialized expertise to answer technical and licensing questions. We also implement, test, and optimize all the things that we sell now, whether that is doing a security assessment up front, whether it's Active Directory services, whether it's implementing gateway firewall, custom configuration assistance on a UTM, etc. We also produce a ton of third-party content like the webinar that you're on today. We do some white papers. All this content is on productivecorp.com/security. The bottom line is we can help you, whether that's implementation, assessment, licensing, optimization services. Reach out to us, help@productivecorp.com. In fact, we use that for all our customers. If they need anything, send it to help@productivecorp, and then we'll make sure the right person or people respond to you. We're here to help. And one of the ways we do that is by putting on content like we did today. As we talked about at the top of the broadcast, we have Scott Roberts of Bitdefender here talking to us about XDR. He hails from Ohio, or he currently lives in Ohio, just south of Cleveland, kind of neutral on the Skyline chili debate. Doesn't seek it out, but I think I got him to admit he doesn't avoid it either. So let's give a warm virtual round of applause to Mr. Scott Roberts. Scott?
Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for the intro, Todd. And yeah, I mean, in response to that, that's quite the chili dog. That's a very interesting take on a hot dog. That's all I can say. You definitely gotta want cheese. So yeah. Anyway, so again, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time today. So I know we only got a little bit of time, so I'm gonna dive right in. So kind of my objective today is to just kind of help you better understand the evolution of, just what's happening in the endpoint world. So that you're more familiar, with what's changing, why it matters, how to make better decisions out there. My goal today is to kind of talk about, how do you take something that you kind of have to have, right? We all need, antivirus software, and turn it into something that is making you more productive, more aware of what's happening inside your ecosystem, giving you something that you're actually using versus something that, you're just kind of hoping is working behind the scenes. So, a bit difference with, Bitdefender, kind of how we approach the market is, we recognize that, you expect us to build the best mousetrap we can, right? So first and foremost, that's what we're always doing. A couple of differentiators with us, and, we've been around since kind of the inception of this modern day technology we're all dealing with, but we recognize that building the right product or the best product does definitely require R&D and manpower. So probably somewhere on average of 50% of our population is 100% dedicated towards doing that. That is, after all, what you expect us to do. Another big differentiator with us that drives our technology and drives that innovation is the partnerships we have with, I think it's somewhere on average of 40% of the cybersecurity community out there, as far as other manufacturers, other vendors. They OEM, our toolkit behind their name. So that, forces us to stay, up and coming and constantly current. And that's also, what I call my favorite award slide. What more could I ask for if so many other players in our space are willing to put their name in front of our technology? That's the best thing, I can ask for. So, I always get this question, all right, and I'm sure some of you are asking yourselves this. It's like, all right, so what do these guys do? Why do I care, right? So jokingly, what problem do we try to solve? And I always throw this up. So in reality, at the end of the day, this is really what we're trying to solve. What's happened in our industry, and it's no big secret, is that there are tons and tons of great tools out there. And, the reality is they're all very, very good. You have lots of options as an end user and as a customer. And the reality is they're all good tools. But the problem that comes with that is now I've got all of these different dashboards and they're all good and there's crossover between them and all this stuff. And that leads back to, that slide right here is at the end of the day, and certainly by the end of the week, it's like, gosh, I'm exhausted. So how do we as an industry do a better job of kind of starting to tackle some of these real issues? All of these different tools with too much crossover, too little visibility. Definitely not enough staffing to and expertise to, man the trenches the way everybody needs to. We're all definitely dealing, with budget constraints and trying to do more with less. And, the reality of IT anymore is we're all focused on driving our organizations forward. IT has become the catalyst for, productivity, driving profitability, efficiency inside of an organization. And oftentimes a lot of these tools that we've purchased, that we kind of have to have, that we don't necessarily want to have, are kind of backburnered unless there's a problem. And, that's certainly an issue with traditional antivirus, that you have this mindset that it's kind of set it and forget it. And hopefully it's doing its job when it's supposed to, right? I mean, I don't know anybody that's coming to work saying, gosh, I can't wait to spend my afternoon inside my antivirus console. No one does that. But the reality is we have to. We have to spend more time in that space, and I'm going to dive into it a little bit. So kind of in the beginning here, we had, these endpoint protection or prevention, platforms that historically have been very, very good. And, Bitdefender's approach to this is first and foremost in that prevention idea. If we don't have to have a problem, let's not have a problem. If we can focus first and foremost on prevention so that we don't have to triage stuff on the other side, that's always the best idea. That kind of helps us a little bit with that set it and forget it and value tool, right? It's like, so what else can we do to kind of, maximize the efforts there? So, where Bitdefenders a little bit different is, we recognize it's like, all right, there's other areas that we can do to shore up just the security posture of an endpoint. What else can we do to stop our user population from, getting to things they're not necessarily supposed to? If we can do things like full disk encryption and patch management across not just the operating system, but across, on around 150 other applications that are so, popular in a commercial environment. If I can help you take on those duties a little more efficiently, you're going to spend more time using my tool, right? If I can do maybe some web and some application protection where, I can stop your users from getting to, malware or whatever to begin with, that's always a good idea. Again, let's stop them from getting there first and foremost. So that's the whole idea behind the toolkit. At its core is let's focus on prevention. but things are changing. So EDR, endpoint detection and response, or as I like to say, tell me all about it, really is the new starting point in our industry. Because what's happened is, we have all of this malware. Everything's happening inside our ecosystems. People are throwing rocks at us. They're doing whatever they need. So we have to have that visualization tool, that analytics tool that helps us better understand those question marks in our environment, which is really what it is. So I stress, EDR by itself or in and of itself is not a prevention or protection technology. It's an awareness in analytics technology. And regardless of the size of your organization, everybody needs that. And this is why we're seeing so many of these threats actually circumvent our networks, is because these bad actors, they're taking their time. They're often quiet, they're evasive. They're, spending time, shopping your network, going up and down the aisles looking for what else they can do. Can I steal data? Can I deploy, ransomware? Can I exfil data out of the environment? What's the maximum amount of reward I can get for my efforts? So an example I like to use to kind of better explain EDR is this. So anyone inside, any IT guy knows exactly what RDP or remote desktop protocol is, all right? It's just a connection technology. It's a remote access technology that's pretty much built into every Windows system. Admins, remote users use it all the time to access those resources. So there's nothing wrong with it in and of itself. RDP attack, it's not ransomware. It's not crimeware. It's not malware. But if you're being carpet bombed with RDP attacks, odds are you're probably going to want to know about it, right? So in and of itself, at its core, this is what EDR is trying to help you understand. So this example is a question mark of something that's happening in your environment. Maybe you thought your firewall was blocking it. Maybe you thought that stuff was disabled. Well, guess what? Now you know. And you know before the bad guy is getting more of a foothold in your environment, okay? So this is why I call EDR the new starting point, because every organization, regardless of size, we all have the same problem. We're all trying to function. We're all trying to keep our users connected, especially in this whole, transient world we all live in now. Traditional security tied to, traditional physical infrastructure has really changed, right? So, what are the boundaries of our networks anymore?
Yeah, right.
Our boundaries.
Scott, if you don't see the, what's happening at, these different endpoints, or you can't see any telemetry, you're not seeing the whole picture, because, right, those guys will brute for it. They'll get in the RDP, then they'll just be very silent to not trigger anything until they figure out what they want.
Correct. So you as, that end user administrator, or, a VAR that may be responsible for helping you do this, has to have a toolkit where they can get in and pay attention to that. Again, that's the core behind EDR. That's why I'm always saying this is the starting point. This is where it matters. This is where we have to spend our time. So what's changing? So we keep hearing this term, a big part of the conversation we're having today is XDR. Well, what the heck is that besides, a new buzzword in our industry? So at its core, XDR, or I call it Rise of the Machines, is any other endpoint or device inside your ecosystem, right? That's not a traditional endpoint. Well, how do we start to pay attention to that traffic as well? So I call XDR EDR 2.0 because at its core, that's what it is. It's just an evolution of that toolkit, making it better. So now we have the ability to unify, different security detections and telemetry from all other sources inside of our environments, right? So, okay. So now maybe I can collapse some of those dashboards we were talking about, when we first got started here. And maybe I'm doing it in a way where I'm making it easier to pay attention to the stuff that's happening. So what if I could take this traditional endpoint tool that I have to have, right? I mean, nobody buys it because they want to. It's just something we have to have, and turn it into something that is really making me more productive. What if I can plug into all of my endpoints regardless of where they're at? What about my server workloads, whether they're local or regional or AWS or wherever else? What about telemetry that's coming from like Office 365 and Active Directory, or network sensors that maybe, placed out inside, I don't know, industrial environments or whatever, and listen to all of that traffic as well. This is the idea behind it. An example I often use is this commercial grade coffee pot that was a real event we dealt with. A commercial grade coffee pot got compromised in a customer's environment and was used to throw rocks at everything else it could touch. Traditional solutions would never have known about this type of traffic. This is the idea behind XDR. How do we collapse some of these traditional tools, turn this into something that you want to spend time accessing because it's really telling you value of what's happening inside your environment, and it's helping you be more productive and confident in what you're doing. And on the other side of that XDR tool, I'm presenting you visual aids that are really, really granular. Yeah, so traditionally, I would have had a bunch of alerts with different incidents on different endpoints, and you may have thought they were all different, but in reality, they're probably just one. So let's flip that around. So maybe when I'm presenting stuff to you, I'm telling you it's coming from Office 365. How many users and hosts are associated with it? Were there files that were being exfilled out of my environment? Are there IPs I can block? I'm giving you value. And I'm doing this in a way where not only can that, IT generalist, maybe your entry-level help desk guy that's responsible for primarily maybe paying attention to end users can understand what they're looking at. But yet that advanced analyst, maybe that senior admin on your team, is still getting a lot of value out of the toolkit. That he or she feels like there's more going on. And I'm going to present this in a couple of different ways depending on how you like to learn, what you like to look at. I'll give you that whole pathology or kill chain. So I can see immediately here, that Bob's PC here is being used to throw rocks at everything else it can touch, going back to my RDP brute force attack, right? Well, Bob's an immediate culprit. I can get in there very quickly and say, all right, let's shut Bob down and take a breather and figure out what's going on from there. So again, how do I make this toolkit better for you as an end user? How do I give you something that you actually want to use versus just, hey, we all need antivirus software, right? Again, nobody wants to spend their afternoon inside their AV console. But wait a minute, maybe I do want this running as a tab as part of my workflow. Now I'm actually getting value out of it. Now I'm actually seeing what's happening inside my environment. So at the end of the day, it's really pretty simple. Everyone has to be paying attention to this stuff. You just do. And if you're unable to, don't have the resources, whatever the case may be, we're going to provide you options to be able to do that. And this is why you're hearing so much about, managed detection and response options out there, because at the end of the day, someone's got to be watching the hen house. And, at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, when you've had your third beer and don't care, watching your team lose, and you're not really thinking about work, and your phone's charging on your nightstand, and the bad actor's doing his thing, and you don't know it, but Monday's going to be a real bad day. Somebody out there is still dealing with all of this. So a little bit of clarity. So what is MDR? So managed detection and response is basically, at least from Bitdefender's implementation, is we're taking ownership of all of that for you. So what does that mean? So there is some confusion on what these services are all about. I mean, are you going to manage my firewall and patch my systems? No. I mean, that being said, I am thinking about patching your systems, but that's another conversation. Do I necessarily care about your web content filtering? I don't. Only you guys know what's appropriate or allowable inside your environment. What we are going to do is we're going to deal with all of that heavy lifting when it does hit the fan. And let's be honest, we see it too often. Odds are that it will eventually. And you need somebody that's able to immediately be actionable. When something's changing inside your ecosystem, again, on that Sunday afternoon, is somebody doing something about it immediately? Or are they just sending you a ticket that you may not be reading in enough time, say, hey, something seems unusual? Well, you need somebody out there that's truly taking ownership of it. And it's really, really simple. So you can either go through the effort of, hiring somebody yourself as reasonably as you possibly can, or giving, one of your existing employees, the opportunity to take on this responsibility. But it is an extraordinarily heavy lift when it comes down to it. And, I use Fred, the dirt cheap security guy here as an example because, we really did find Fred at a song and a dance price. Let's be frank. We got him some really decent training, really reasonable price. Productive gave you your EDR and your SIM management tools at, a heck of a discount, but still, I'm going to be able to solve those problems, with Productive's help more economically than you're going to staff it internally. It's just the reality of what we're running into. And we're going to do this in a facility, based out of San Antonio that is probably unlike anything you've ever experienced. I mean, this is very much a world-class operation. It's built as an extension basically of the U.S. military. That's why we put it in San Antonio. For those of you who are not familiar with San Antonio, that's basically the Air Force's Cyber Command. It's also, San Antonio has some of the best schools in the world for, developing cyber analysts. So our talent pool is very available down there. So it's purposefully built, specifically to maximize, the workforces that's available in the industry, with talent that we've sourced from all across the world, including, the guy who runs it is the NSA liaison for British intelligence. Okay. Done a lot. Half the other teammates that did this were the original ones that built Rackspace. So this is definitely not their first go round. The team down there is 100% world class. So targeting time here, want to give people an opportunity to ask questions if there are any. These are things we could certainly circle back around on, but Todd, are we seeing anything out there?
Yeah, I guess, this isn't specific to Bitdefender, but I mean, and you showed it on the slide with IT guy Fred. You need a SIM and XDR, but sometimes we hear from vendors that, hey, this might, replace your SIM, or it's a SIM light. What's your kind of view of, great. I see, maybe speak to this a little bit and speak to where it's going. I mean, you showed there wasn't log, logs aren't being collected by XDR, but what's the future hold and where do you see it actually working?
Well, there's definitely a lot of collision with these traditional tools in our industry. And the end point, where we're seeing it is definitely with this evolution of XDR. I mean, everybody ran out and bought SIM tools either because they had to or they wanted that event correlation right? Mm-hmm. But let's be honest about it. When was the last time you actually looked at it? And when you were looking at it, did you really understand it? And were you looking at it post-event when it was too late? SIM's a great tool if you have, again, the resources to manage it. Yeah. So XDR's idea is, all right, do we necessarily need that in every environment? What if we could take 90% of what you would be trying to utilize a SIM for and bring it into that XDR console? And I'm going to collect all that telemetry from all of those different sources that way. Now, if you need to store logs indefinitely for, 20 years for compliance purposes or whatever, XDR is not going to be your only toolkit. Doesn't mean it won't do most of the heavy lifting, but long-term log storage is a different thing.
Yeah. And that's usually compliance driven.
Correct.
Right. So, but really, kind of less relevant to day-to-day security. I mean, maybe it proves, right, from a compliance standpoint that there wasn't a breach, right? If you have these logs, so you can show that nothing happened, but it's not making you safer having all that log data.
That is correct. It's not stopping the threat. It's just telling you everything that's hopefully happening in your environment if it's matured properly and configured properly, which oftentimes is another battle.
Yeah, it's just operational.
Environments and people don't keep up with it.
Yeah. So anyway, I get that. And I see some guys in the lower to mid market saying, hey, they really don't need a SIM, or it doesn't, maybe they looked at like an alien vault, but still, that was still a lot of work for them. I feel like this is a good, a good step in that direction. It's giving you the telemetry. It's giving you insight on the things you want to see in the network, and if you don't need that kind of log data stored indefinitely, this seems like you could use this in lieu of a SIM. And I would say, and maybe you guys are working on it, maybe give customers the option to download log data. You guys hold it for a while, then they can download it and store it somewhere else, right? I mean,
Yep. And you can do that now. I mean, directly from Bitdefender's Gravity Zone console, I have options for you where you can exfil data out of it and push that into a third-party toolkit if you need to. So I can feed it both directions at the same time.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so you could kind of do it that way if you like. So yeah, and I guess the final question I would have is, hey, how do you kind of position XDR relative to the other offerings out in the market? I mean, as far as value, features, that kind of stuff. I mean, it seems to me like it's really in the sweet spot, but I'll let you kind of have the final word where you see it fits out there.
Well, sure. Yeah, there's no secret. There's a lot of options in this space, and I mean, they're all good options. They are. You guys, as the end user, my job is to help you understand what those options are. What makes sense for your environment. Bitdefender's approach here is, we believe that, targeting that endpoint, that processor, that memory, that storage, something in your environment has the ability to move lateral or, monkey with other things in the environment or exfil data out, which is what your threat actors are typically trying to get to. If I can stop that endpoint from being that, point of compromise, I've done my job. Regardless of, whether I'm ingesting firewall logs or all my syslog traffic or whatever from every other source in the environment, at the end of the day, I'm looking for bad behavior. And at the end of the day, you're expecting me to do something about it, right? I mean, that's when you delegate something out, you think I'm going to be actionable. Well, a lot of the services out there aren't necessarily, and this is where things are a little bit different. If I'm monitoring your network and I'm collecting firewall logs and I'm sitting like a sensor in your environment, does that necessarily give me the ability to do something at 3 o'clock on a Sunday again, right? Or first and foremost, you need something that's like, all right, when something does hit that infection point, can this resource that I've outsourced to do something about it immediately? And that's something MDR offerings strive at, because I am already sitting on all of the endpoints. We see something go sideways, our rules of engagement, that whole statement of work that we've discussed in advance. I'll stop that traffic. I'll make policy changes. I'll block that lateral movement. I'll isolate endpoints. I'll shut them down. I'll do whatever. I can immediately do what you would be doing on the network, to stop that threat, give you an opportunity to breathe and pause. Then it's like, all right, let's circle back around and figure out how this happened. But let's stop that threat first and foremost. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's awesome. Really appreciate it, Scott. Great presentation. Great content. I'd say to everybody on this today, really take a look. We can absolutely show you a demo, talk to you specifically about how it works in your environment. Really, really cool stuff. And we like what Bitdefender is doing.